So before I get started, I hope everybody had a good New Year's, had an enjoyable, if not relaxing time. We definitely all deserve it. And I mean, we're coming into the into 2021 with back-to-back Suns dubs, so that's always a a goddamn blessing. Okay, I guess we can go ahead and get this started. I definitely want to say, starting off, that I fucking love DeAndre Ayton, man. I understand the concerns with him. I understand why people might be abrasive, if not disappointed. But dude, tonight was one of those games where it just fucking reminds you how good this kid could be. This kid he already is fantastic. He was our best player on both ends of the floor. I fucking love what I saw out of him. He was contesting at an extremely high level. But not only that, on the defensive end, he was rotating early in the paint, early on penetrations. They were killing us early on penetrations, getting to the basket with absolute ease. And Ayton really began rotating early, adjusting to that. And granted, Jokic did not have the best game of his career, especially in the first half. He was passing the ball extremely well. But it's one of those things where the Nuggets aren't a team who are necessarily going to kill you with that first rotation to the big, where Ayton steps over for the penetration and then they feed the penetration down low. Because the Nuggets are often a team that are going to have Jokic standing at the elbow or even out on the three-point line, and then he attacks once the shot goes up, or once they're closing in on the rim. So it necessarily wasn't a team that was going to hurt us with those early rotations from Ayton, and I really thought that was huge on the penetration going in. Dude, I'm so I want to address, now that there are people in here, my heart is still beating. I'm still getting into these close games, and having a fucking shot is just it's such a significant difference from these past 5 years. And I fucking love having that feeling of they're making a huge run, but we could still pull this out. And we fucking pulled it out. And, I love it. I just fucking love it so much. I love Chris Paul so much, man. Oh, my God. I just fucking... the defense was Gobert-like. And even on Murray, he was amazing on the perimeter. He did a fantastic job switching onto guards. I think he had one or two possessions where he did a really good job on Murray out on the perimeter. That one where he went straight up with the verticality. You can't ask more of him. He had 4 fouls at the time too. So that was just huge defense from Ayton. But there were even once or twice where I think once he got switched on to Barton, and then once or twice he got switched on to Morse. And he did a fantastic job with them. Gives them just enough room where they feel confident, just sitting with the pull-up shot rather than attacking him. But if they do attack him, he's done a fantastic job, not only just this game, but all season long. I love what I'm seeing out of Ayton on the defensive end in every single game. This was probably his single best defensive game. It was not the Suns' best defensive game. In fact, we actually probably had our worst defensive game outside of that first Kings game tonight. But, it's the Denver Nuggets. They have a fast-paced, great ball movement offense. So it's going to be a team that's going to be harder to just clamp down on defense. But at the end of the day, this was DeAndre Ayton's best defensive game so far this year, from my opinion. I fucking loved what I saw from him, not only on the defensive end, not only on finishing shots, going up aggressively in the paint, not backing down away from Jokic, but his rebounding. I continue to harp on this. Thank you for the follow. I really appreciate that. But I continue to harp on this. Ayton's rebounding is so fucking important to this team. So goddamn important. There were 3 or 4 instances in the fourth quarter where if it had been anybody else other than Ayton, thank you for the follow, if it had been anybody else on this team other than Ayton, then they are getting that offensive rebound, or the one offensive rebound that Ayton got, they're getting the defensive rebound. He's one of those guys where he's very good at boxing out. He's really improved at boxing out since his rookie year. But goddamn, is he a fucking athletic freak when it comes to rebounding? It's just, I don't understand it. Thank you for the bits. I greatly appreciate that. Palms are sweating, dude. My palms, my palms are sweating too. I still, like I said, my heart is still racing, man. Holy fuck. Um, Zealot Charge, I appreciate the follow. Aiton, great deed without fouling. That's the highlight, the defensive highlight of the game for me was when Jamal Murray isolated on him, then attacked him, and Aiton went straight up. They didn't call the foul, and I don't think he blocked it, but he obviously altered the shot. Appreciate the follow. I genuinely appreciate the follows. That means a lot to me. And then there's another one. Like I said, that I love to see that. Thank you so much. Murray loves to bring it against the Suns. Something personal for him being from Kentucky. But this time there was a team on the Suns, and I love it, dude. I fucking love it so goddamn much. I just like Murray is a bucket, and he always shows up against the Suns. He really knows how to penalize us. Like, he is one of those guys who can just, like, it feels like every game he plays for us, he goes for 30. And he was low-key cooking Mikal on the defensive end. This was really the first game this year where Mikal had played some good defense still, and I mean, even whenever Murray was cooking him, he was still playing solid defense, but he definitely was not slowing Murray down tonight. I think he might struggle. It's kind of in the same lines of how I've mentioned, like, he kind of struggles on penetration a little bit, where if somebody does kind of get that shoulder past him, he doesn't have the strength right now. He needs to bulk up so he can continue to step back in front of that defender on the penetration. And Murray he doesn't have to bulk up for Murray, but Murray's just a little bit too fast for him, I think. But, I mean, we saw what Murray can do in the bubble, and this was the first night that Mikal hasn't been anything but the best defensive player on the court. So I'm not worried. I still think he played great. Seeing CP3 get some boards, man, very exciting, dude. I'll talk about CP3. I really want to get into CP3. So what do you think of CP3 passing up on giving the ball to Booker before he made the tough go-ahead two-pointer? I think that I understand that D-Book is a fucking bucket in the fourth quarter, but at the end of the day, Chris Paul is one of the greatest clutch players, not only in the NBA today, but in NBA history. I know that's more of a statistical thing than an actual, like, oh, he's just showed up in huge games. But, I mean, if you look at the statistics, Chris Paul late fourth quarter statistics, I mean, they're not only high volume, but high efficiency. So I'm all in on Chris Paul just be like come set a screen and everybody else get out of the way when it comes to the fourth. But respect to Jokic for surviving that sixth foul. Glad to see Ayton shush some stat watchers, because he honestly has taken huge strides this year. I mean, absolutely. And I mean, I think people are afraid not only he didn't take the step on offense, but he's regressed a little bit just because, I mean, he hasn't put up the points that he normally averages. But I mean, we saw tonight that is all overblown, all overdressed. I mean, we see that this is a new team. This is a new offensive system. It's going to take time, especially for Ayton to adjust. But at the end of the day, he's extremely talented, and he has taken a significant step on defense. I know it's early, but it's one of those things where defense doesn't really... I mean, I guess it matters a little bit whether the shot goes in or not, so it still has that kind of probabilistic factor that feeds into it. But at the end of the day, his contests and his rotations on defense have been absolutely fantastic. It does not matter if the shot is falling or not. I really love what I've seen out of Ayton so far this year. Obviously, there is more that I would like to see out of him, but tonight was the total culmination of not only the offensive skill that we've consistently seen since we drafted him, but just the hope that we had in him being our defensive anchor. He's our fucking defensive anchor, guys. And, I don't need to see another game to know that guy right there, if he shows up more times than not, we will be perfectly fine on defense, no matter who else we have on the team. But obviously, having such great perimeter defenders obviously significantly helps that. Last shot situations and wave off CP3, giving that veteran presence we needed in that game. Never knew when to take the shot over Book. Ayton's perimeter defense. Ayton's perimeter defense obviously isn't elite, but I mean, for a 7-foot big man, you can't expect that to be elite. really all I'm saying, or all I need to see out of Ayton when he's guarding the perimeter is perimeter guys feeling like, I'd rather take a shot over the 7-footer on the perimeter rather than beating him off the drive and getting an easy layup. That is really what you want to see from your big men on defense, especially when they get switched out on the perimeter. And we've seen that from Ayton. He's a guy who, more times than not, perimeter players feel more comfortable settling for shots over him. And when they do drive it into Ayton, he does a good job at recovering and a fantastic job at contesting. And to me, that's as good as you can get on perimeter defense for a big man. Obviously, you can get better, but that's the most you can realistically expect, especially for a young center. Was hard to see Rubio go, but CP3's next level put the Suns on his back to close it out. I couldn't fucking agree more. I loved what Rubio did to our offense last year, but no disrespect to Rubio. CP3's on a whole fucking other level. It's not just his shot creation and his ability late in the fourth, but I've mentioned this several times on my stream where CP3 has an absolute elite ability to not just find the open guy with his passes like a Rubio does at an elite level, but CP3 has a truly elite ability to get guys open with his pass, as in the guys aren't open until the pass is made, and then they cut to the pass, and all of a sudden they are now driving to the basket with their defender right on their hip where they can get by him. Like CP3 has, and not only that, but kicking it to the corner where the defender's on the hip, and they kick it to the corner, and the guy has to outstretch his arms and then set his feet under that pass, and when he sets his feet under that pass, he is now open and can get the shot off. CP3 is fucking elite at that, and it has really, really opened up our offense. Tonight, it didn't necessarily open up our offense as much. The ball movement was quite slow for for the first 2 or 3 quarters. It wasn't great comparatively. It was still at least average from the other NBA games that I've seen. It's not like we had bad ball movement tonight. But after seeing the ball movement from the previous 3 games versus this game, it definitely was not there. I don't know if that just has to do with Harris and Barton, the Nuggets' length, or if once those threes stopped falling kind of late in the second quarter, our ball movement just it really slowed down. And I think that it would have hurt us more in the third quarter if it wasn't for that just absolute scoring output that D-Book put on early in the third. I think he had 12 through like 6 minutes in the third. But after that, after D-Book kind of cooled off a little bit, the lack of ball movement kind of really hurt our offense and was, in my opinion, what really allowed the Nuggets to get back in this game. But I'll touch on that more later. This is the most impressive road trip the Suns have done in probably about a decade. If we're talking about impressive versus expectations versus the context of expectations, I completely agree. I have been so fucking impressed with this team, and tonight there were a lot of things to be learned and a lot of negatives, but at the end of the day, we just won a tough game against the Western Conference Finals appearing Nuggets. This was no slouch of a team that we just beat, and even though they had MPJ out, we had Saric out, so it still was a very impressive dub, and there are a lot of high points to touch on, as well as some more low points than the previous wins. We have a tough slate of games in back-to-back against some of the hardest teams to win at home against. I completely agree. I appreciate the follow, by the way. I completely agree. This stretch of this season is definitely not nice to us, but we've come out clean so far, so I'm absolutely loving it. Playing so well against Utah last night, and then coming out strong against the Nuggets. Might have faltered a little bit there, but we are back-to-back. It was a back-to-back game, so there definitely was some fatigue. I think that might have hurt our defensive rotations tonight. But overall, I'm incredibly optimistic coming off of this game. It honestly feels like Ayton loves the switch onto guards. He loves shutting down those smaller, agile guys, and is the best center on perimeter defense in the NBA. I don't know if I would say best center. I think you kind of get into the guys like Bam Adebayo, But he's absolutely one of the best when it comes to perimeter defense out of centers. I mean, he moves his feet incredibly well, which allows him to recover, like I mentioned, off of those perimeter guards or the perimeter wings especially. So I agree that he's one of the best perimeter defenders, as well as I think he's really establishing himself early this season as just one of the best defenders. I mean, I don't think he's quite on like a Gobert or an Embiid or an AD level, but he or Bam is also in that first tier. But I absolutely think he's on the high end of that tier 2 of defensive centers, and I think tonight absolutely showed why I believe that, why I have that faith in him. So I love what I saw tonight out of the big man on defense. Do you bet sports? I do occasionally. I've fallen off of it a little bit. It just it makes me get too into the game, so I kind of stay away from it. There's an interview with the media guy for an hour about DA talking about how much he loves guarding guys on the perimeter. He loves it. I mean, that's really not surprising. He does a fantastic job, especially compared to his peers. Okay, so now that I've kind of just, given my general thoughts, I'm just going to go one by the Suns player, or just kind of talk about like what I saw tonight, what I'd like to see going forward, as well as just, again, my kind of general thoughts. So we've talked about Ayton. I definitely want to talk about Mikal tonight. Started 3 of 3 from 3, ended up 4 of 8 from 3, 14 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists, and a block. I really, really liked what I saw out of Mikal early on in the game, but kind of like I mentioned in my post-game takeaway, teams are obviously going to begin to key on him as a high-level knockdown shooter if he continues to shoot this way. And the Nuggets absolutely treated him as that. Past the second quarter, into the second quarter of this game, and it really affected our offense, and I don't think in a great way, even though it opens up a significant amount of opportunities for our offense. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we would see the Nuggets, especially in the third and fourth quarter, not rotate off of Mikal, as well as rotate early when there were rotations, like backside rotations to help on Ayton. And so what I am seeing is they really were keying on Mikal on the perimeter, as well as not wanting to necessarily let him get into penetrations. There was a lot of hedging and help whenever he was trying to penetrate, and then he kind of just stopped penetrating, which I was not a fan of, and especially late in the third and early in the fourth, when our offense and ball movement kind of broke down. It kind of there was a handful of minute stretch where it kind of became a 3-point shooting contest for us, including Mikal, and I really hated it. Like I fucking hate when teams do that. When you're cold, attack the basket, get to the rim, get to the pull up, and we just continue to settle for shots. And the way that they're playing Mikal on defense, more teams will continue to play on Mikal, and that opens up driving lanes for us. That opens up the driving for CP3 and D-Book. And I mean, we saw them beginning to take advantage of it. We saw D-Book take advantage of it early in the third quarter, and we saw CP3 take advantage of it late in the fourth. But at the end of the day, I want to see more driving, not just from CP3 and D-Book off of the ball movement, but I also want to see Jay kind of get more involved with that. Oftentimes it feels like Jay, although he moves the ball quickly on the perimeter, it doesn't stick with him. If he's driving the basket, it oftentimes feels like this is the final shot, or there will be one more pass after this. For the final shot, like this is going to either be the final shot or the assist. And I really want to just see him continue to penetrate as an aspect of our ball movement, rather than just sitting there and waiting on the threes and flare screens and just running on the perimeter. I definitely want to see more penetration, and Cam kind of as well on this lines. I obviously want to see this, but I have seen more of this from Cam. I mean, we saw in the fourth quarter where there's that one point where Cam drove in, did the little behind the back, and then fed it to Ayton really quickly. That kind of stuff is going to be incredibly important when teams begin to key in on Mikal on the perimeter. And I think that it's not only incredibly important for a ball movement going forward, especially if teams come out with that kind of defense on Mikal, but I don't know. I think that it was one of those things where because we didn't keep up that level of penetration, it helped curve our ball movement a little bit, and our ball movement was already a little bit stagnant comparatively. So I think it had a compounding effect on our offense. And hopefully we can see that on film. The Suns can see that on film and adjust accordingly. And kind of, like I said, just factor into penetration within our ball movement rather than penetration as a way to find a shot, you know? Like, rather than... Anyways, you get my point. Devin Booker tonight... I mentioned that Devin Booker's been an enigma in my main takeaways tonight. I think that D-Book, he definitely has not been in midseason form nor bubble form. I think in many of the other games, he kind of started off the game passive. He really didn't start this game off passive, but he kind of began to become passive, especially in the second quarter when he missed one or two shots. And passive Booker has just had some bad turnovers this year. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily like he's a sloppy ball handler or a sloppy passer, but there have absolutely been some sloppy passes, as well as some unnecessary turnovers from D-Book while he's being passive. So I'm not in love with that. However, the free throw trend is bizarre. I mean, he went... What did he shoot from free throw? He only shot 2 free throws tonight. I don't know. However, with D-Book, and I'd say that you say I'm personally encouraged by Devin Booker's performance today. Third quarter and fourth quarter he did well, but CP3 with the bench unit also looked insane. I definitely don't hate D-Book's performance tonight. I think that he didn't necessarily show that intensity on defense that we've seen in other games, as well as kind of being passive in moments. And those two things combined weren't fantastic. But in the third quarter, when that ball movement broke down, he's still a fucking bucket. And that's incredibly important to remember. That at the end of the day, he's still our best player on this team. He's still our best scorer on this team. And he's still one of the best scorers in the NBA. It's been easy to forget that through the 5 or 6 games this year. But when push came to shove, I mean, he went fucking nuts at the beginning of the third quarter. So, I don't think this was a bad game from D-Book. I mean, that 3-point shot that he hit from Barton, where Barton started to rip it away, then he ripped it back and was just wide open at the 3-point line and drilled it. I think it was like 1:50 left. I mean, that was the shot of the game, outside of maybe the CP3 runner. So, I don't think it was a bad D-Book performance. I just know that he's capable of more, and in those games where he's really passive, I definitely want to see him continue to turn up the defensive intensity like we've seen in other games, especially like the Pelicans game, where he wasn't a significant part of the offense, but he was grinding on defense. He wasn't letting anybody just torch him on defense. And tonight, he definitely took a few plays off on defense in the first half, which I did not love. But at the end of the day, he's a fucking bucket, and his offense in the third quarter is the difference in the win. Worst plus minus on the team. It's understandable. I just he has the potential to be so much better, but out of the 6-game slump, this was probably his best performance. I don't know if I would say it's his best performance. I would maybe say impactful, just because of that late game 3 as well as the third quarter run that he pretty much went on his own. But exactly. Let's hold him accountable for his talent. He is the best player on the Suns, and I mean, I want to see more from him, and that's okay. He's allowed to not have great games, but he definitely is in a little bit of a slump this year. It's obviously not affecting this team, and I can't fucking wait to see what it's going to look like when he comes back and has those 70% shooting 30-point games with this squad. It's going to be fucking beautiful to see. But you do have to actually, contextualize the fact that he wasn't necessarily fantastic tonight, even though the stretch in the third and obviously the 3-pointer at the end of the fourth was as big as it gets. Chris Paul tonight finished with 21, 5, and 6. Surprised he finished with 21. He really was quiet in the first half. He was actually missing a considerable amount of his mid-range shots in the first and second quarter. He finished 50% shooting, and it's because he decided not to miss anymore in the fourth quarter, which was fucking so sexy to watch. But he just tonight was a weird game for Chris Paul, where he definitely had, I would say, two of his worst quarters in a Suns jersey so far in the second and third quarters. Late in the third, he had a few turnovers that really helped spark the Nuggets' run. And like the defense was fine tonight, but we're often seeing that we're not putting him on the best guard on the opposing team, except for late in games, which is understandable because he's 36. I don't expect him to be guarding the best offensive player on the other team night in and night out for 36 minutes. You can't expect that out of him anymore. But when it all mattered, when it came down to the grits of the game, Chris Paul said, "Give me the ball and get the fuck out of the way," and I fucking love it. That little mid-range, the low crossover he has into that mid-range pull-up to, I think, put us up one at that point, because that was right after the, I want to say, Will Barton three. One of the Nuggets hit a three to put them up, and then he responded with that mid-range pull-up. And that is such a sexy shot. Like, it's so beautiful to watch. Like, his mid-range form is just, it's crazy how open he's able to get at such a small guard. And it's going to be huge for us down the line. I mean, I said this after the first game of the season. Those CP3 highlights was the 2 or 3 minutes of cooking Campazzo, or however you say it. Yeah, no, he was going at him. Was that late in the first quarter? He was killing that dude. I kind of feel bad for him. He saw a rookie and was like, I bet. And I love that. I want to see D-Book continue to do more of that. D-Book does love to do that, especially with smaller rookies. But CP3 just went straight at him and said, "Stop me if you can," and he couldn't, and he got pulled out of that. And I mean, I have only seen one Nuggets game so far, and it was against the Kings when they lost. But Campazzo, from all accounts, is a legitimate offensive threat for them. Is incredibly important for their bench ball movement. And tonight he didn't do jack shit because CP3 was cooking him early on, and like that was an incredibly important part of the game. That definitely deserves some credit. But at the end of the day, like I said, having that reliable, consistent scorer, or somebody who can create a shot for somebody else at any given moment is just going to be so huge for us in the fourth quarter. And it's going to continue to help us stop these big runs that will happen, especially if we're up on a good team like the Nuggets. I definitely think that there is more we can see out of Chris Paul in terms of ball movement and getting the offense to generate touches as well as just motion, more so than we did tonight. But at the end of the day, he gets an A for the day. He closed out the fourth quarter in every ability that we could have asked for him. Back-to-back huge buckets, knocked down both of his free throws, played some good defense. I do love what I saw out of Chris Paul when push comes to shove. I think that's not only going to be incredibly important for the rest of the season, but obviously when we get to the playoffs, that is also going to be so significant for this team. And I hope that D-Book continues to learn from him. I mean, D-Book's already cold as fuck in the fourth quarter, so I wouldn't mind him picking up some pointers from CP3 in those high-pressure situations. Jay Crowder tonight, Jay Crowder was probably the person I was most disappointed in tonight. I'm a Jay Crowder fan. I was not before this year, but I really like what he brings to this team. However, I did not see a lot of it tonight. He did fine with the ball movement, but his motion tonight was not fantastic. And when the offense became stagnant, he becomes heavily reliant on somebody else to create the offense for him. Excuse me, I need to sneeze. But it's one of those things where I just 0 for 4 from 3. I do want to see more out of him. And, I mean, the boxing out wasn't fantastic. We actually did a very good job rebounding tonight. Oh, actually, they out-rebounded us by 1. But through the 3 quarters, we were doing a solid job rebounding tonight. But I would like to see Jay get more active On the boxing out, I've mentioned this before, but that's one of the biggest things that he can bring to this team is backside rebounding, especially when teams have two bigs. The Nuggets are not one of those teams, but that backside rebounding is still incredibly important to help from offensive rebounds. And I definitely want to see more from Jay on that end going forward. His defense was fine tonight. He did a really, really solid job. Paul Millsap, a little while there, was kind of bodying McHale. He had one or two straight possessions where he attacked the body of McHale. One was a putback, and then one he just drove into the body of McHale. And then Jay switched on to him, and Jay did a very, very solid job. I don't think Jay had a bad game, but I know that Jay is absolutely capable of more of not only offensive production and creating for himself, but those kind of intangible things of the backside rebounding and all of that. Cam Johnson tonight had his worst game of the season, but I'm not too worried about it. It was not a bad game necessarily. 9-4-2, 3 of 9 shooting, 3 of 8. He shot 33% from the floor, which is not fantastic, but 3 of 8 from 3. I mean, you can see why he shot 33% from the floor. I do want to continue to see Cam driving. I'm not incredibly confident in his handle necessarily, but there have been flashes, like I said, with the fourth quarter little dump off that he had to Ayton. I want to see more of that out of Cam Johnson. Sorry, I want to read these comments really quickly. Second quarter, I know we aren't really going to talk about it, but Langston Galloway in the end of the first and end of the second, I absolutely will be talking about Langston Galloway. Do not fret about that. Cam Johnson, though, like I said, I want to see him continue attacking. He has this thing where he has the offensive aggressiveness that is necessary, but too many times he knows his sweet spot is the three-point line, and he would rather take a contested three than potentially beat his guy off the dribble. And, I mean, he does beat his guy off the dribble. That's one of the progressions that we've seen out of him in the bubble and the last 5 games. But tonight, there wasn't much dribble penetration from Cam, and that was not great. And then my biggest gripe with Cam Johnson, I love the guy. He's been great for the team. He's got to get better at rebounding, man. He for a 6'9" athletic guy with a solid body, just put a box out on somebody, for the love of Christ, man. Like, I understand it. I get it. That's kind of the nitty-gritty, the thing that doesn't get attention, and obviously there are other parts of his game that he needs to focus on first and foremost. But when he's getting heavy power forward minutes and he's not boxing out on defense, that hurts us. That really does hurt us. There was a 4 or 5 possession stretch where they got 2 or 3 offensive rebounds, and 1 or 2 of them were because Cam Payne did not turn and box out his guy. I definitely need to see more on the glass out of Cam Johnson. Want to see him continue to penetrate. Love the 3-point shot. Love the spacing he brings to the offense. Tonight we really didn't have the bench performance that we always have. However, we still have a solid bench commingling with our starters. Like, when we have those kind of split lineups where we have 2 or 3 guys off the bench, our lineups are still absolutely elite, and we're super critical to some of the big runs that we went on tonight. However, whenever it was just the 5-man bench lineups, those kind of got hurt a little bit tonight, and you know, that's going to happen sometimes. They are the 7th and 8th rotation, like a 7th and 8th in rotation. Like, it's understandable. Tonight, Cam Payne, 2 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He was not penetrating as much, which definitely hurt the ball movement from that second unit. But I definitely just want to see him continue to put his head down and attack the basket. That is where our bench unit truly thrives. And tonight, I mean, he attacked occasionally, but he definitely did not attack as consistently as he did in previous games. And I definitely think that impacted our bench, especially late in the fourth, as well as kind of like late in the second. The 3-pointer is going to come. He only shot 1 tonight, but I definitely, he played some good defense tonight, but want to see more penetrating. Javon and played some great defense. He makes me a little bit nervous there whenever it's those CP3 and Javon Carter lineups. I understand why we're doing that. We're allowing Javon to guard the Jamal Murray or the De'Aaron Fox of their team. But Javon, his shot hasn't been falling so far this season, and I definitely, I know it'll fall. I've mentioned this before, he's an extremely streaky shooter. He was an extremely streaky shooter last year. It will fall. But when it's not falling and he's getting 15 minutes a game, and we don't have great ball movement and there's no penetration, I definitely would like to see his minutes come down from that 15 to 18 range to the 10 to 12, just on a game-by-game basis. However, if we're in a game where the ball movement's great and the three-point shot is falling, I want to see Javon get 20 minutes and just absolutely lock in on Dion, their best perimeter player. But that was not tonight, and so, love the idea of a Twitch post-game analysis review show. Thanks for streaming. I definitely appreciate the kind words. Next is Kaminsky. I think I've actually kind of been impressed by Kaminsky's defense this year. It's not good, don't get me wrong, but last year his weakest spot was defense, and he's actually contesting very solidly. He's putting some bodies on people on the boards, so I do like what I'm seeing out of Kaminsky. He continues. He's not a guy, or he is a guy who's not afraid to put his head down and attack the basket. He had that really nice little spin in the post and went up quickly. I think he is a great threat at somebody who will finish plays after good ball movement. Like, he's maybe not somebody who generates ball movement, but is somebody who can capitalize upon ball movement. So I like to see him getting minutes, and I do like what he offers. I think he played solid tonight. Langston Galloway, 7 minutes, 9 points, and it's a crime he didn't get more minutes. I think that if we are going to be a team where when the ball movement breaks down, we are okay with jacking some threes, then why the fuck is Langston Galloway not on the floor? If there's one person I want jacking threes, it's this goddamn man. This man has a fucking flamethrower. This man's got a goddamn strap for a shooting form. It's nuts how fucking quick this guy's release is. And I just think that is in the same vein of a Frank Kaminsky. He's somebody who, if we're generating great ball movement, he's somebody who fully capitalizes upon that good ball movement. So I want to see Langston Galloway become more of a consistent part of our offense. I want to see him getting 15 minutes a game. He is already one of my favorite players on the squad. Like, I understand his shortcomings. I understand that he doesn't generate offense for others. I understand that he's not necessarily the best defender. But at the end of the day, this man has maybe one of the quickest releases in the entire NBA and is a fantastic, fantastic shooter. He's somebody who is not only a useful shooter off of the ball movement, like I said, is able to fully capitalize upon ball movement, but he's also somebody that when shit breaks down, he can still get his three-point shot off. And when shit breaks down and we need a bucket, I am all in on Langston Galloway getting more minutes and getting those shots. So it's just one of those things where, and Langston continues to get backup minutes with the backup guards. At one point, he was on the floor with Cam Payne and Javon Carter, and I want to see him get more minutes next to Chris Paul. If Chris Paul can continually get Mikal and Cam Johnson fantastic looks at the three-point lines based off of his penetration, I would fucking love to see what Langston Galloway could do next to Chris Paul for 5 or 6 minute stretches in the game, especially in the dog days of the second quarter where things can sometimes break down or teams go onto runs. And I think he is somebody who absolutely is a run sparker. He is somebody who can get us on a roll offensively. When our team is seeing those shots go in, I think it is huge not only for our confidence, but also just for how willing people are to quickly give up the ball. It's very easy to catch the ball. You want to penetrate. You want to see your options. But when you have a guy like Langston Galloway on the floor, who, when he catches it, is going straight up, and there's a goddamn good shot or a good chance that that shot is going in, like, people want to continually get the ball out of their hands as quickly as they can. So I am all in on Langston Galloway getting more minutes for this Suns team, especially as we get further on into this season. So I've gone through all of the players. Like I said, I wasn't unimpressed with our defense. Our defense was still very good tonight. I mean, we held the Nuggets to 103 points. That alone is a significant achievement. I loved what I saw out of DeAndre. From the defensive end, I was a little bit underwhelmed with Mikal, but he had as tough as a job as anybody, which is a Jamal Murray who was shooting flamethrowers. Like, I mean, there's only so much you can do in those situations. But I definitely think our rotations were a little bit slow at points, as well as really early on in the game we were allowing easy penetration. However, my biggest negative takeaway was the breakdowns of ball movement. And I really, really hope that that is more of a product of us coming off of a back-to-back against another playoff team and playing a second playoff team tonight. Our ball movement was definitely quite stagnant. It in fact, there were only a few instances in that first Kings game where I saw the ball movement be as stagnant as it was at times tonight. It wasn't totally stagnant, but there were definitely some lineups that we ran. Like the campaign, it was campaign, Javon Carter, Mikal, Cam, and Kaminsky. I'm forgetting somebody. Galloway was in there for a little bit, and then Jay was in there for a little bit. And with both of those lineups, we've seen that lineup have great ball movement. We've seen the ability of campaign to penetrate and create opportunities for his teammates. We've seen Mikal be a secondary playmaker, come off of screens with Kaminsky, a drive to the basket, and continue that ball movement. But we didn't really see that tonight, which was definitely disappointing and was a very, very important piece in the Nuggets coming back in this game. However, Chris Paul did Chris Paul things, and that's all that really fucking matters. So off of that, I'm just going to kind of read some of our Suns' comments, just kind of react to them, get y'all's reactions to them, and then from there, I'll review my game notes. Also, Jokic, Jokic was not great tonight. I mean, obviously, he had the passing going really early, was creating for their offense, and then late in the game, I mean, he's one of the most clutch players in the league. If Chris Paul's a top 3 clutch player, so is Nikola Jokic. And we saw it with that huge three-pointer that he hit. I'm glad that we had opened up enough of an initial lead so that wasn't the killer. Jamal Murray, Jesus Christ, 12 of 22 shooting. He's a fucking bucket. Paul Millsap getting 15. Obviously, Paul Millsap's a great player, but I definitely think most of those points were created from that penetration, especially from the passing from Jokic. And like I said, Mikal was kind of having a tough time with him early on in the game. And then once Jay switched on to him, we were able to adjust better to Paul Millsap. So I did like that defensive adjustment that we saw throughout the game. I love that. I love this, the 5-0 in outscoring. CP3 is on the Phoenix Suns, which is just fucking so beautiful. Like, I love it so much. Seeing Chris Paul make these basketball high-level decisions on the floor in a Phoenix Suns jersey, it's just like, it's a fucking dream come true. I know we got old man Chris Paul, but we still fucking got Chris Paul. And that's just like, that's so I'm not used to it. And I don't know if I'll ever be used to it, but I sure as fuck love it. Man, we needed this. I am proud of the boys for winning both games on a back-to-back in 2 of the most difficult arenas to play in against good teams. Put that into perspective. I have zero doubt that Booker will get better, and this is the turnaround game for Ayton Watch Out League. I don't think this. I think this was Ayton's best game. I talked all of his praises tonight. I do not think this was a turnaround game from Ayton. I think Ayton's been here, man. I understand that his offensive production has been underwhelming, especially in that first Kings game, where he was getting doubled significantly. But it's been there. I understand that the points haven't been there. But he has absolutely, in my opinion, been a top 3 or 4 player on our team, the second most important defensive player on our team, and at moments, the most important defensive player on our team. And, I mean, the rebounding has been there. The contests have been there. So I wouldn't say a turnaround game, but I would like to say a continual progression in Ayton's getting comfortable with the offense. So the outcome is the same. This is definitely a good point, something very positive to look forward to for Ayton. But like I said, I don't think this is a turnaround so much so as it is him just necessarily getting comfortable. Also, I love the fact that we were able to pull out a back-to-back against the Jazz and the Nuggets. I mean, those are 2 fantastic teams. And if the NBA didn't already know it, now they fucking know about the Phoenix Suns, man. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the future. I can't wait for more close games down the line and to see what this team is really, really made of. And with Chris Paul, I mean, we're made of some fucking great stuff. This was mine. I guess I'll see if anybody has replied to it. My man's has had this copied and loaded to paste soon as the thread went up. I did. In fact, I actually bought NBA League Pass for the Suns, not only just because I want to reliably have a source for the Suns, but it was kind of tough getting these main takeaways immediately in the post-game thread. Whenever I was 40 seconds behind to 2 minutes behind on those illegal streams, and so you know, had to go ahead and get League Pass. Had to be nice and ready for these post threads. He just types 500 words per minute. You know how it is. Mix in some stats, and he has a blog. No, instead, I have a stream. And this is a shitload of fun, so I love it. I love the fact that the Suns win video is still live to this day. I love how active our game threads are. I do too. And I'll be going back through the game thread later once I get off this stream. 41 million does not look expensive now. Should I pay 42? That's hilarious. It's one of those things where when you see some of the contracts around the league, when you see a Russell Westbrook with the Washington Wizards or the fucking 40 million a year that Gobert just signed for, I will pay this man 41 million in a heartbeat. I mean, he is still, without a doubt, one of the best players in the NBA. But not only that, throughout an entirety of a game, he's one of the best players in the NBA. But in brief moments, he's still a top 10 skilled player. He doesn't have that throughout the game. He is not a top 10 player in the NBA, do not get me wrong. But when he needs to get a bucket, when he needs to get his team open, when he needs to get a stop, he still fucking can with high level of consistency. That talent that he had back in 2012, 2015, 2018, it's still fucking right there. He's just in an old man's body now, so it's understandable why he doesn't do it for a full 30 minutes a night. A 6-game stretch off of games from Book isn't going to make me forget about everything he's done for this franchise since coming to the league. Still efficient, though, apart from the free throws. But he's got to work on his ball security. I don't even think it's his ball security. I think, I hate to say this, because obviously I don't think D-Book is a lazy player, but they're lazy turnovers. I mean, so many of his turnovers, even tonight, were just poor positioning, and then the defender comes up and he has to bail himself out, and then he makes a bad pass. Or he jumps for the pass when he doesn't know where he's immediately going, and then throws it away. And so many of D-Book's turnovers that we've seen this year have not been from a lack of ball security necessarily, or a lack of ability to pass or ability to dribble. But it's almost entirely just poor decision making, which I think it has to be attributable to rust. I mean, we have to remember they got 2 weeks of training camp. There was 4 games of preseason. Like, there was not significant time to shake off this rust. So I definitely think that almost all of D-Book's turnovers that we've seen have been incredibly preventable from D-Book, and he just needs to play smarter, and he can play smarter, and he's played smarter for almost the entirety of his career in Phoenix. So I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be able to turn these turnovers around. Dipping in and out, so sorry if you've covered before. How do you feel about Ryan McDonough in the context of the D-Book draft decision versus Jackson Chris Bender decisions? He is not in the Ring of Honor, but is he Ring of Good Blokes? I don't know. I think that he is. I think that Ryan McDonough has redeemable traits, but I think he was obviously a dog shit GM, and not only did a horrible job at drafting, but did a horrible job at conglomerating talent around our franchise staple in Devin Booker. I understand that we were going through a rebuild period, so he was just wanting to take shots on high potential players, none of which panned out. I am not personally a fan of Ryan McDonough, but I don't hate him, I think there's a lot of hate for him on our Suns, and that's not me. Like, I think that he did good for us. I mean, he got us fucking Devin Booker. Like, you can only be so angry at that. But at the end of the day, he didn't fulfill his job duties. He didn't put a team around D-Book. He left D-Book in a position where he spent 5 years with 26 wins as his best team, and every single season losing wins. So I don't like Ryan McDonough, and I wouldn't say he's necessarily in the Ring of Good Blokes, but he's definitely not in the Ring of Hate. He's kind of in that I'll forget about him in about 8 years kind of ground, I guess you could say. For next stream, can you move the webcam widgets to the right side of the screen so we can also read the Reddit thread? Oh yeah, definitely. I apologize for that. Whenever I play games, it's always on the left side. So I'll definitely make sure to adjust that. That makes a lot of sense. There is a lot of room on that right side. Same vein, what is Monty's best decision since he landed? Monty's best decision, not James Jones'. It's Monty's best decision. I think that his best decision, God, this is a tough one. I would say there are a couple ways I could go. I'm just going to kind of spitball here because I haven't really ever thought about this. One is the defensive importance that he placed on DeAndre Ayton, especially early in last season. He pretty much threw him to the wolves, and I think that significantly helped DeAndre, where rather than game planning around DeAndre's defensive weaknesses and defensive lapses, he really was like, you're going to have to stand on your own 2 feet. This defense is going to allow high levels of penetration, and you're just going to have to defend it. And Ayton has slowly but surely begun to be a high-level helper and contester in the perimeter, and I think in large part it's because of Monty's system of pretty much just throwing him to the wolves early on in his second season. I think that I hate to say like his motivational speeches, but I definitely think that there is a significant part to culture and the winning culture and the mentality from day in and day out that Monty has significantly contributed to, especially with some of those post-game speeches like we saw after the last game in the bubble. I just think that kind of conversation, that kind of discussion that he generates within the team is something that not only gives us faith, but actually gives the guys confidence. I think that's a big thing, especially for a guy like Mikal and Cam Johnson. And then I think if we're going from like a play style perspective, other than the DeAndre just throwing him to the wolves on defense, the ball movement. I mean, our ball movement that we've seen in these first few games, we've incorporated an almost entirely new system. It's not a completely new system, but the 0.5 offense is almost entirely new to this Phoenix Suns team. It relies heavily on the ball movement as well as that penetration that I've talked so heavily about. And it's an offense that not only caters to CP3 and D-Book, but it also heavily contributes to the open looks that guys like Cam Johnson, McHale, Jay Crowder, Langston Galloway, and Javon Carter are getting throughout the season. So I would say that has to be, if not the biggest decision Monty has made, or best decision Monty has made, one of the best decisions that Monty has made. Ayton is a very strong ring defender. Good takes. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Ayton absolutely is. I love what I've seen from Ayton, especially this year defensively. Okay. So we've gone through all of kind of the general analyses, and so I'm just going to kind of take a few minutes to go over my notes, and then we can call it one. I didn't take as in-depth notes, and so I'm just going to kind of skim through them, but I definitely want to touch on specific plays that are examples of what I talked about throughout my analyses. So the first thing that pulls up is Devin Booker immediately driving early. Doesn't look like he's planning to be too passive. I've mentioned this in other or after other games where D-Book has kind of looked passive very, very early on. However, in the first handful of minutes of this game, he was attacking the basket, and he had 3 or 4 shot attempts early on. The shot wasn't falling, and it kind of led to him being more passive, especially in the second quarter. But I love to see him coming out with kind of a tenacity, and rather than I'm going to make sure everybody else gets open looks before me, I'm going to go get a fucking bucket kind of mentality. I mean, that's what we've seen from D-Book his entire career. That's when we've had the most success, and even though we're having great success with him being passive this year early on, I still love that just, I'm going to go get a fucking bucket to start this game kind of mentality out of D-Book. Ayton going up over Jokic in the post with 2 consecutive possessions. I love to see that. We saw his aggressiveness early on in the first quarter, and that really never resided. I mean, Ayton was a significant part of Jokic getting into foul trouble, especially in the third quarter. But I just love to see that when Ayton is aggressive early on, he is aggressive throughout the game. And I think there is a lot to learn from that. And a lot to be hopeful for, especially if Ayton gets going early on in games. I talked about the Paul Millsap kind of getting into McHale's body. The Nuggets were penetrating well, so the buckets weren't tough for them early in the first quarter. I love to see the play where Ayton caught the ball at 15 feet and he had Paul Millsap on him. Then he dribbled it and got just an open layup. That quick little dribble that he had towards the middle of the floor and then just put it up. I love to see that he's attacking from 15 feet rather than just settling for the jumper. I think we've seen him settle for that 15-foot jumper a lot more this year and in the bubble than we did his rookie year even. So I love to see him attacking the basket, putting the ball on the floor. That's just one of the many things that I saw out of Ayton, especially early on, that just gets me really excited for him. Murray had 12 points 6 minutes into the games. He got started early, and we were not slowing him down at all. That's whenever McHale still was on Paul Millsap, and then Paul Millsap was playing really well after that stretch from Murray. We switched Jay onto Paul Millsap, and then McHale onto Jamal. And although McHale didn't do a great job, he definitely kept Jamal from going for 12 points in all 4 quarters, I guess, which is a plus. Let's see. Paul Millsap out-rebounding a Cam Johnson box out. Like I said, Cam Johnson's just got to put on more weight. I think Cam Johnson is a fantastic asset for this game, or for this team. I think he does a lot for our offense, but I want to see him take that next step in rebounding. I mean, like I said, he's an athletic guy. He's not a short guy. His length. So I need to see him be more active on boxing out and rebounding. I need to see him engaging in boxing out as soon as the shot goes up and not when the ball hits the rim. And I need to see him attacking the rebound at the highest point he can rather than waiting for the rebound to fall into his grasp, which we saw whenever Paul Millsap ripped the rebound away from him. Rather than going up, boxing out, and going up, he boxed out and he went up like literally right above his head, and Paul Millsap just ripped it from him. So I definitely want to see more from Cam on the glass. Talked about how D-Book was kind of taking some defensive plays off, which I wasn't loving, especially whenever his shot wasn't falling. Mikhail starting out 3-3 from deep. That was huge for us getting started. And at that point, our ball movement was still fantastic. But when those threes stopped falling and they started switching up the defense on Mikhail, that's when the ball movement began to stagnate. Second quarter, strong rebounding on the defensive end. And I mentioned this in my main takeaways, but I was really, really impressed with just the defensive intensity that those backups bring to our squad. I think our best defenders outside of Javon are all in our starting lineup. Our 5 best defenders are the 4 starters in the Javon. But it seems like every time that they step onto the floor, they just bring a significant defensive intensity that's contagious for our team. And guys start trying. Well, my stream just went out on me. I apologize. My laptop decided that it was a good idea to just turn off right there. Just hit the restart. So I do apologize for that. And we're back live. I only want to finish up a few more notes on this analysis, and then we'll go ahead and call it. So on that end, I believe the last thing that I had mentioned was the bringing the defensive intensity from the second group. I was really, really proud of that from that end. And I think that's something that we've seen throughout the different sets of games. I definitely think that they continue to be the defensive spark despite not necessarily being the defensive players that our starting lineup is. I love the Langston Galloway catch and shoot threes. His quick trigger is astounding. It's fascinating how quickly he can get those shots off. However, I do want to see him get more minutes. I was actually quite sad whenever he got pulled early in the second quarter. I love the CP3. At one point, he had like a nice little pull-up hesitation and then got the defender off the ground and fed Ayton for the and one. I love that their connection very clearly continues to grow. And there were a nice 2 or 3 instances this game where we really saw a high-level connection from CP3 to DeAndre Ayton. And I think that's only going to continue to improve. Let's see. Millsap with the entry pass from Jokic. Jokic fed Millsap, and Millsap was able to go up straight immediately over Mikhail. And that's just another example of Mikhail needing to put up on some weight on defense. It could be worse, but there are definitely some instances where Mikhail obviously needs to put on some weight and some bulk to really achieve the highest level of defense that he can achieve. Even though he's already probably a front runner for too early to call first team all defense. From the third quarter, I said that D-Book actually started that quarter over slow. He missed a few shots and then had some turnovers. And then he went on that crazy, almost essentially 12-0 run by himself. It wasn't a 12-0 run, but a 12-point run that he was entirely generating himself. Let's see. I love to see Campaign getting an offensive rebound. One of the things that I enjoyed tonight that I did like what I saw out of Ayton was boxing out a lot, which allowed our guards and our wings to get a handful of offensive rebounds, which were incredibly important, and especially in a game that came down to 3 points. That really was the difference in the game, even though it seems like such a small thing. D-Book eating in the third. Murray started carving up our defense at the end of the third. Nuggets aren't going away. The game looked to be over with Jokic picking up his fifth foul, but it is far from over yet. We definitely had a sloppy end of the third quarter, led by Chris Paul and Devin Booker. A few careless turnovers, and our offense was incredibly stagnant, and with those guys turning the ball over, we couldn't get anything going, which allowed the Nuggets to get back into the game. However, obviously, CP3 and D-Book combined brought us home at the end there. Let's see. Ayton did a fantastic job contesting Murray at the rim vertically, not drawing his fifth foul, then immediately hits the turnaround mid-range over Hartenstein. Love to see Ayton taking the game home for us. And it definitely looked like it was going to be a game that Ayton was just going to take over. And at the end of the day, it ended up being CP3, and I am completely okay with that. At one point, we had a Payne, Javon, McHale, Cam, and Kaminsky lineup, which was quite dangerous. I understand that our bench needed, or our starters needed some rest minutes, but the three wasn't falling, and that was definitely when our offense was most stagnated. And so that really hurt us down the stretch. And in those situations, I would like to see Cam Payne continue to penetrate and attack the rim more than he did, especially in the fourth quarter. I mean, we've seen he's fully capable of doing that. And then I also need to see some more penetration out of McHale, especially in that fourth quarter when things began to break down. The Jamal Murray step-back three to make it a 5-point game was fucking nuts. D-Book drawing the foul and only making one free throw. Jamal with another pull-up brought him within 4. There was at one point with 4 minutes left where we were up 4, and D-Book had his patented step-back 3 that he hit against the Jazz to put that game away. But it wasn't needed. 4 minutes left, up 4. I really thought it was early in the shot clock. I thought it was a poor shot selection. And D-Book can get a bucket. He doesn't need that step-back 3. And it was just a poor shot selection. And when you're up 4, if that misses, that they had plenty of time to finish off a run. And if that doesn't go in, it's not a great shot. And it didn't go in. So I was not in love with that shot selection out of him, especially with 4 minutes. If it's a minute left, if it's 30 seconds left, by all means, go for that shot. But with 4 minutes left, I thought it was an extremely questionable decision. However, just 2 minutes later, he hit that 3 after the steal attempt from Barton. So we made it all up. Let's see. CP3 ends the bleeding with a mid-range pull-up at the jumper, or at the elbow. Nice little move, and good to see it going down after CP3 had a cold end of the third quarter. Jamal currently cooking. It's McHale. He hit that little spin fade away over McHale. McHale really just didn't have any answer for Jamal tonight. But the real the thing that put the nail in the coffin was the successful challenge by Monty on the McHale foul on the Nuggets fast break. I thought that was a 10 out of 10 decision by Monty to challenge that foul. We were up 2 at that point, so they could have tied it up. I think that it was a ballsy decision, and I fucking love it. I love that he didn't waste the challenge on something beforehand. Nobody was in necessarily bad foul trouble where there was a point in which he would have felt it necessary to spin that coach's challenge. And then Ayton getting the jump ball, I thought was fucking huge. And then we went down, CP3 hit that little runner, and the game was over. Saw a lot from the Suns tonight. Extremely happy with this win. I think it showed a lot of character from our team. However, there are obviously things that need to continue to improve throughout the season. But at the end of the day, we just came off of a back-to-back win against 2 very good playoff teams. So there's a shitload to be happy about for the future of the Suns. I appreciate y'all hopping on the stream, and I cannot wait for the next post-game analysis. Thank you for hopping on.